No, really, I did.
Architectural standards were here in 2010, 7 years ago.
Okay, good to know.
Well, remember the BC district has its own architectural standards built in.
But it isn't required to be seen by Architecture Review Board.
According to this, no?
Yeah.
I would argue no, frankly.
Yeah, okay. Did you get?
I did, yep, thank you.
At 6 o'clock?
Okay, good evening. Calling to order the Middletown City Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, May 10th, 2017. Can we have a roll call, please?
David McCauley Myers. Here. Mike Friedman. Yes. Paul Nenny.
Here.
John Langhorn.
Here.
Gary Gross.
Here.
Joanne Mejias.
Here.
Todd Moore. Larry Mulligan. We have quorum.
Thank you. Second item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like to ask everyone to stand, please.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of April 12th, 2017. Do we have, all have a chance to review? Are there any questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
Motion and second. Roll call, please.
Mr. McCauley Myers.
Yes.
Mr. Friedman.
Yes.
Mr. Nenny.
Yes.
Mr. Langhorn.
Yes.
Mr. Gross.
Abstain, I was not here for that meeting.
Ms. Mejias.
I was also not here.
Mr. Moore. The minutes for April 12, 2017 have been approved as submitted. Please let it note that at 6:01, Mr. Mulligan has arrived.
I had to say 6:01. Okay. Item 4 on the agenda is a public hearing, Development Plan 2-17. A request for a development plan approval for Kettering Health Network to construct a new 65,000 square foot medical and emergency facility that will contain both medical offices and clinical services. The applicant requests variances as well as combined preliminary and final development plan approval. The property is located at 6147 West State Route 122, Middletown, Ohio. Can we get a staff report?
The property background, previously this property was the former location of the Rain Inn Hotel that was closed in 2014. The hotel was later demolished in late 2016. Here's a location map. As you can see, the star indicates we're 6147 West State Route 122. The property, the site we're looking at tonight is located. It is in close proximity to CVS is located here. You have the new BP gas station, the billboard next to the highway, and Interstate I-75 and State Route 122. The property is located in the BCH Business District, surrounded by BCH to the east, again, CVS, BCR Business Center Residential to the south, Grace Baptist Church, BCH Business Center to the west, Interstate I-75, and BCI Business Center Interstate to the north. BP gas station, again, is across State Route 22. Here is a closer look, an aerial. The site is 13.66 acres. As you can see, that aerial shows the former Rain Inn. Photos, apologize, they're a little hard to see. looking east. The first picture there is looking east towards CVS. The second picture is looking west along State Route 22. You can see on the right-hand side the BP gas station. The bottom left, looking north of the site, again, you can look straight over, and BP gas station is located there. And then the final picture is looking west towards I-75. Project background. The Kettering Health Network proposes to be up and running by 2018. The applicant is requesting approval of combined preliminary and final development plan. Per the applicant, the development is located on the southeast portion of the property, close to State Route 122 and I-75 interchange, and request the following variances due to these following reasons. Access to the site and the existing CVS store is provided via an existing public road, specifically Union Road and adjacent service road, and there are no current plans to modify the existing roadways. 2, existing creeks run along the site's northern and southern edges. Dix Creek is adjacent to State Route 122, and there's another creek that runs along the southern edge. There's a significant topography associated with both creeks along with the FEMA-regulated floodplain. As indicated on the development plan, the footprint of this project has been designed, and there are no impacts to the existing creeks and associated floodplain. The primary building elevations are proposed to be visible from I-75 and State Route 122. The southeast elevation will have limited visibility from Union Road. The southwest elevation will have limited visibility as it is screened from the adjacent property by vegetation along the creek and wetlands located on the southern portion of the site. Here's the proposed elevation. This is the northwest elevation, as if you were looking from I-75. Here is the proposed site plan. Has a similar footprint to the Rayton Inn. Staff analysis. Kettering Health Network facility proposes a 2-story tall building with a total of 65,000 square feet in size. The first floor will feature an outpatient emergency department clinic and imaging center, along with a medical office building for physicians. The second floor of the building is planned as a holding place for future growth of the facility. The plan also proposes to contain a single-story, 300 square foot utility structure, a helipad for evacuation of patients needing higher levels of acute care, a loading zone that is proposed behind the building and landscaped by a berm to provide screening from the east. The proposed use of a health care clinic is principally permitted in the BCH zoning district. Per the planning and zoning ordinance, a clinic is defined as a building used for care, diagnosis, treatment of sick, ailing, infirm, or injured persons with those in need of medical or minor surgical attention, but who are not provided with room or board or kept overnight on the premises. The primary building materials are masonry, glazing, architectural composite materials. The primary building elevation meets the zoning code requirements for facade transparency and ground floor transparency. The glazing used on the facility will meet the planning and zoning ordinance for the 30% transparency. Staff analysis. The plan proposes a helipad to the rear of the building. Per the applicant, the helicopter evacuation is anticipated to be limited to roughly once per month. The location of the helipad shown on the plan was selected to balance proximity to the emergency department with clearance from the building and clearance from the existing overhead power lines. Kettering Health Network is working with MedFlight providers to review the location in accordance with FAA standards. Kettering Health Network is requesting the following variances. 1, combined preliminary and final plan approval. If approved, any future modifications of this plan would be seen by the Planning Commission as either a minor or major amendment depending on what was proposed. 2, variance from horizontal scale requirement of 30 feet. Vertical elements are incorporated throughout the facade in the form of vertical windows, material changes, and wall projections. The applicant requests that the requirement be increased to 60 feet to account for the large scale of the building. Per the Planning and Zoning Ordinance, building facade shall incorporate at least one vertical element, projection, or recess for every 30 feet of the facade length. The requirement applies to all buildings located in the BCI and BCH districts. Three, variance from architectural metal requirements. Architectural metals are on the facade are included in the form of aluminum composite metal panels and used to accent brick, stone, glazing materials, and used elsewhere on the building. These materials comprise roughly 20% of the total elevations. Rooftop mechanical units are proposed to be enclosed with screen walls comprised of architectural metal. The total of the metal panels, excluding the mechanical screen walls, is roughly 12%. The northwest elevation uses 20% metal, southwest elevation uses 17% metal, northeast elevation uses 27% metal, and the southeast elevation uses 18% metal. Per the Planning and Zoning Ordinance, all building materials that face the public street shall be constructed of stone, brick, wood, stucco, cultured stone, cement board, ceramic tile, ceramic block, or exterior insulation finish, EIFS. Architectural metal is permitted provided that it occupies no more than 10% of the facade and that all fasteners are concealed. At the bottom, that's just a breakdown of each elevation and the materials used. Here's the proposed elevations from each side of the building. Four, sign height and size variance. Due to the proximities of the site to Interstate 75 and State Route 122 and the emergency function of the facility, the applicant is proposing an increase to the allowable number, area, and height of the site signage. There will be 5 signs proposed, 2 ground-mounted, a ground-mounted located adjacent to the Kettering Health-owned network, which would be along Union Road. I'll show that here on a map in a second. They own actually another parcel that's not a part of this proposal. 2 large highway signs, and there will be a ground-mounted sign northeast of the property, which I'll also show here in a second. The Planning and Zoning Ordinance for BCH zoning districts is for a building of 2 non-residential uses is a maximum permitted area of 40 square feet and a maximum height of 5 feet. This property is substantially visible from both I-75 and State Route 122. The building does propose signage, and per the zoning ordinance, the total shall not exceed 1 square foot per each lineal foot of property facing a public street. For the measurement taken using our GIS map, I calculated over 2,000 feet of road frontage, so they will have more than necessary for their wall signage. Here are the proposed signs. The ground-mounted sign, the one at the top, which I'll show here in a second on a map, would be a total of 514 square feet. There will be 2 ground-mounted signs proposed. Both of those would be 196 square feet. And the 2 highway signs, which would be a total of 737 square feet per side. I'll have to go. I'll show you later in this presentation with where they are on the map. 5, a variance from the maximum 30 feet setback requirement due to natural constraints. BCH zoning district requires a 30 feet maximum setback requirement with a provision under the code that allows it to be increased due to a natural man-made development constraint. In this case, we have Dix Creek. It's a natural constraint, and there's actually another no-named stream that adds another constraint to this property. The map there below kind of highlights with red Dix Creek, and you can see the existing footprint of the right and end. 6, variance from pedestrian circulation requirements. A, street frontage. A sidewalk or bike path is required along existing public roadway except for State Route 122. There are no sidewalks planned due to there being an existing highway project that will be being taken under the state law. B, greenways. For sites that abut or include portions of Dix Creek, a continuous 10-foot asphalt multi-use path is required. There are several constraints which restrict them from doing so. The topography and Dix Creek, how it runs into the property, would hinder them from being able to do that greenway. Internal connections. The site provides for internal connections between main building and entrance and the parking lot. A pedestrian amenity area has been provided adjacent to the main building. There can't be connections to existing sidewalks, bike paths, or greenways because there are no existing facilities to connect to. Crosswalks, the pavement markings will be visually distinguished from walkways from the surrounding pavement on the plans. This is just talking about the plan now. This is not a variance requested. Pedestrian amenities. The planning and zoning ordinance requires pedestrian amenities of at least 1 square foot of pedestrian amenities per off-street parking space. Pedestrian amenities include outdoor pedestrian plazas with benches, outdoor dining, outdoor playground areas, water features, clock towers, public art, or similar outdoor features. And then the pedestrian amenities should be placed in front of a building near the public sidewalk or near the building entrances. These are just close-ups taken from the plans proposed that feature those public amenities. The development plan proposes outdoor seating areas for employees, visitors, and patients. The total amount of pedestrian amenities is required is 200 square feet, and they are proposing 347 square feet. Parking. The total amount of parking spaces required for the project is 195 spaces. For the plans submitted, they do propose 198, and that will exceed our requirement by 3 spaces. Landscaping. Per the planning and zoning ordinance, in order to enhance and soften appearances of buildings, at least 50% of the area within 10 feet of the principal building shall consist of planted areas containing a combination of trees, grass, flowers, shrubs, and other ground cover. The total amount of landscaping proposed is 5,432 square feet. Per the planning and zoning ordinance, there must be 5% of landscaping for the total amount of paved areas. The code also requires that 50% of the landscaping be located 10 feet within the building range. The plans submitted exceed the code requirements by proposing 7,854 square feet of landscaping. The landscaping required is 20 trees, 40 shrubs, and the plans show 26 trees and 40 shrubs. This here is just talking about in relation to our East End master plan and our master plan. The property is considered to be part of Middletown's East End. Per the East End master plan, Middletown is to capture growing demand for new office, commercial space, housing for the growing community that is the beginning to connecting Dayton, Cincinnati. The interchange is at Middletown's front door. The East End and Renaissance area is an outstanding stage for developing upscale businesses and living environments. We feel that this project fits into the East End master plan. The master plan identifies this area as the Renaissance development area, and the land use strategy for Renaissance supports business park development along with limited retail as means to promote conserve land for higher quality office development. Also encouraged is office, research development, healthcare, and high-tech uses. This fits in with our master plan. However, our master plan is 10 years old, which it would be considered to be outdated and will be actually up for redo at the end of this year. Other department comments. The Economic Development Department had the following comment. It is supportive of the Kettering Health Network project as submitted. This project represents a $30 million investment in Middletown and the addition of 110 new jobs to the community. This project has already cleaned up a vacant building formerly located on a property that will enhance the presence along I-75. It is a nice complement to the regrowth we are witnessing in the East End, joining the new AK Research and Innovation Center and the new BP gas station, also located along I-75. The variances that are requested for this project largely involve topographical items, and any project would request this due to the nature of the site. This is a good project for Middletown and is consistent with the East End Plan and the recent market study of the area. The Engineering Department had the following comments. Traffic impact study is required. This was discussed in our pre-development plan meeting and is being submitted. 2, current erosion control, temporary seeding, and mulching needs to be addressed at the site. The erosion control plan has been submitted and is under review. The parking lot over sanitary sewer and utility easements. The city is not responsible for restoration or any excavation required in the sanitary sewer utility easement beyond granular structural backfill to grade. 4, the curb ramps at Access Road and State Route 22 and sidewalk along CVS property. Engineering does not see any reason to eliminate the sidewalk requirement along the access road beginning at the northern property line and terminating with the curb ramp at the south side of the proposed southern driveway. There are existing curb ramps and crosswalk at State Route 122 and sidewalk along the east side of the access road. 5, verify overhead easement restrictions for helipad location and access. 6, access to be maintained to overhead transmission tower. I think that might be a question or a typo. Full engineering review of the proposed construction plans will be required. Planning Commission notice letters were sent to utility providers and all owners within 200 feet of the property regarding the proposed development plan, and no comments were received or complaints at this time. And we do have many representatives here if you have questions about the plan specifics.
This is a public hearing.
Chairman, I must recuse myself from this hearing as I have some personal ties.
Okay. Still have a quorum, correct? Yeah. Okay, just making sure. Before we get to the public hearing, do we have any questions or comments from the board? If not, we will open the public hearing, and I'd like to invite anyone who would like to come down and speak in support of the application to come forward and state your name and address. And can I have someone to volunteer to swear in?
Would you please state your name and address for the record?
Okay. Good evening. My name is Chad Duran with Environments for Health Architects. The address is 1250 East Copeland in Arlington, Texas.
Okay. And do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth?
Yes, I do. And I'm here on behalf of the applicant. We are the architect of record for the project, and you know, I've listened to the summary here, and it's an accurate assessment of what we're doing here. Have submitted. I don't feel the need to kind of go through all of the items here, but I would like to just go through the items or just kind of address the variance issues we feel like are kind of necessary, just basically due to the size of the property and the scale of the building. And I'm open to any questions or comments on those items, but specifically the site signs and the site signs being, the property being separated from the highway as it is, but having that highway access, we're requesting the specific site signs be larger than the normal variance. And then also the building elevations, the specific vertical access easement or vertical element requirement. The size and scale of this building is such that it doesn't really warrant the 30-foot restriction simply because of the size of the building, and to break it up even further than it is would really kind of chop up the building and the overall look that we're trying to incorporate. I'm really open to any additional questions at this point. It didn't sound like there were any particular, but I do want to offer that up to you.
No, I think the building looks attractive, and I really do see the need for the larger signs. We want people to be able to see that, especially since it's medical, as staff pointed out. It's real easy to go cheap on landscaping. This is kind of, with the engineering study, it's hard to poke holes in anything, but is landscaping covered under the specs and to put in the landscaping as provided on the plans? I know it's not bush for bush, but,
It's shown to cover the code minimum, but Kettering as a facility wants to be a part of the community and really make this facility shine. So we will be enhancing the landscaping, and it will be a special place. It won't be, it will far exceed the code minimum. So what we're showing will definitely cover that minimum requirement, but we do plan on making some additional changes and enhancing it even further.
well, the building certainly is an enhancement to the interchange. Sure.
Thank you.
I guess my one thought sort of followed one of the engineer's comments that having sidewalk access, even though right now there's no development further south,
Correct.
But along the access road on the eastern border of the development, as far as what it would take to add that back in to the plan.
Well, and I believe I've got a civil engineer here that can maybe address that better than I could, but just looking at the site plan, I did see that there was a curb cut at that corner. As you make your way, probably not even halfway across that property, you do encounter Dix Creek, which is obviously an impasse, and it's going to be difficult to make it back to that intersection. So I think we would probably take the engineering comment as it's stated and probably address that with them further. If it's required to, I would say we were going to do it. The idea, though, is we're not sure what we're connecting to or where that connection would be made.
So is the property to the south then is all considered wetlands, green area, and not developable?
That's correct. There is a wetlands that covers the entire southern side.
And that property is also owned by Kettering then, or is that?
Not to the, well, the wetlands portion of that to the center of the creek that's in that area, I believe, is all owned by Kettering. The property to the south of that creek is owned by another entity.
So that would be developable potential.
Well, there's a flood zone line here on this,
Okay.
probably,
So there's not much room down there.
yeah, that's the south, and you've got Dix Creek to the north along 122, that makes traversing that, I think, challenging with the sidewalk space there.
And so to the south is the area where the star is shown, that's what you were asking about?
Yeah.
It's bordered by creeks on two sides.
Were you finished with your? To follow up on that question and the internal connections, are there any connections planned across to where the CVS is, or is that also a topographical issue, or? The site plan that showed the sidewalks didn't seem to show any connections. Go back.
We don't have any plans at this time to connect to the CVS property. I did note that the report stated, the engineering report stated that there were sidewalks along the CVS property. I wasn't aware of that, and I didn't think that there were, but if they say that is, then I'd say that maybe they do better than I.
And did staff say that there will be sidewalks along 122 as part of a state project?
Part of another program.
Will they be connecting to that at some point in the future, or be required to?
They would be required to in the future,
They would.
if those plans do happen.
Would it make sense to put a crosswalk between the area where the helipad is and CVS, because people coming in, out of there could walk across there to get medication? If you look at the entrance just north of the helipad, something in that area is a crosswalk to get across to that CVS.
It's possible. I don't know that I would necessarily want to encourage people to walk that direction, but it is possible if that's what we require to do.
I'm thinking of our demographic may require one.
So if there were future elements on the site to the east, and I'm not sure what that is, just south of the CVS building, if that's a development site.
That's actually owned by Kettering.
Okay, and are there plans to do something with that at some point?
Well, we don't have plans at the moment, and so we're not submitting for
Okay.
that.
I'm assuming should you do something there, you'll be trying to make those types of connections.
Yes,
And they'd be coming back to you for approval.
correct.
I just didn't know what they could do on the site that's already built, what we could require to make future connections. That's really the heart of my question. As future development happens, will they be required to make connections to those developments if needed?
I mean, I'm sure staff would prefer that they did connect if they're within, with each other.
But is there anything in the ordinance now that would
No,
mandate they connect?
no.
Any other questions?
I
Did
guess
you-
my other question is just some clarity on the signage as far as exactly where those will be located, I guess. I saw the images of the signs. Especially the tall ones. I saw the big one too.
It's gonna be really small. You could see it really, one here, another here.
Which are which? Some of them are big ID signs.
Right.
Oh, which are,
The one that's on Tower Road, on the lower, Union Road, sorry, on the lower right-hand corner, that would be a standard monument sign, smaller signs. The one that is on the access road from 122 would also be a smaller monument sign. The next sign over would be one of the highway signs. That one's set back farther just due to easements. And then the one at the corner would be the low monument side, but the one that's longer. And then finally, the one on the lower left is another highway sign.
any other questions of Mr. Durham?
No?
Okay,
No, thank you very much.
thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to come forward and speak in support of this application? Okay, seeing none, is there anyone who would wish to come forward and speak in opposition? Good evening.
Good evening.
Please state your name and address, and Mr. Macaulay Myers will.
Robert Curry, 10050 Innovation Drive, Miamisburg.
Will you promise to tell the truth, whole truth?
I do, thank you. My name is Bob Curry. I'm an attorney representing Atrium Medical Center. We have both some concerns as well as some objections relating to what's being proposed. Starting with the concerns, one concern is simply that this, of course, is a clinic, which means it is not supposed to have overnight accommodations. There's no objection to the office portion of it, but the concern relates to the second floor. You know, that's future speculative space. What is that supposed to be? This application is for combination of clinic and office. We don't want to see that be left open in a way that it could be expanded to hospital use. That would be contrary to your comprehensive plan, and would ask that you guard against that. Second, I'd like to raise a legal concern that maybe you can take up with your city council, your legal counsel. But in the code, preliminary development plan and final development plan is supposed to be a two-step process unless the property is less than 2 acres. There's a separate provision that says that if you have a variance combined with a development plan request, and that creates a necessity of 2 hearings, that those hearings will be combined into one. Well, really what we're doing today is we're combining a variance and development plan and final plan, really 3 hearings into one, collapsing it all into one big bundle as opposed to taking it in the steps that are contemplated by the code. And so I would raise as a legal objection the fact that it's going straight to final plan at this stage. Next, I'd like to speak to some of the variances. The overall goal of this zoning district is to create urban pedestrian level, an urban pedestrian level environment. Really, this site plan looks like a suburban development placed on that corner and does not connect with the adjoining neighborhood. There are several different provisions of the code for which variances are being requested. One is that there's a 30 feet of maximum frontage with the exception of interstate or State Route 122. And there is more than a 30-foot setback of the building along all three streets on all sides. So it's just a complete, completely ignoring that requirement of the code. Second, the sidewalk requirement, which you've already touched upon, ignored the fact that I can understand not having a sidewalk on Route 122 as well as I-75, but it ignored the public street on the east side of the property and possible connectivity there that you've already touched upon. And also the internal sidewalks that are supposed to connect to other buildings in the area. There's no assurance that when the next zoning comes along for that 4-acre parcel, that'll still be owned by Kettering, that there will be any basis to ask Kettering to make any additional improvements on this property at that time. Next, there are a couple of variances that, relating to the building design as far as the maximum square footage or maximum amount of architectural metal at 10%, and also the vertical elements every 30 feet versus 60 feet as requested. There's no exceptional circumstances that would say that this qualifies for a variance. In other words, I'm no doubt well aware of what the standards are for a variance, and convenience is not one of those. Massing is not an exception in this in your code. It's simply a requirement, and it's not. There's no relief unless there's exceptional undue hardship or exceptional circumstances, which on the building design there aren't. On the signage, what is being requested here is to basically throw out the zoning code and put in the applicant's desire for the greatest highway visibility they can get. It's a complete wish list of, if we want maximum highway visibility, this is what we'd like to have. And so they're asking you to completely ignore the zoning code, and it's really very limited amount of ground-mounted signage that is applicable, and just on the basis that it's on the corner, on the interstate, allow them to put in a massive amount of signage and ignore the zoning code. Finally, on the heliport, I think it's premature to act on that. We don't have, I didn't see any information that indicates that the proximity to the interstate isn't a problem, that the overhead power lines in the area aren't a problem, that the proximity to the CVS right across the street isn't a problem. There are obviously FAA and perhaps ODOT requirements that need to be met, and we've seen no evidence that they have been. So on the variances, certainly the creek is a barrier, and putting a pathway along that creek doesn't make any sense at all. So that's an obvious situation where the topography comes into play, and you make the appropriate variance. But many of these other variance requests are simply for convenience and not based on the requirements of the code. Thank you.
I assume you had no questions of Mr. Curry? Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak in opposition of this application? Okay, seeing none, we will close the public hearing at this time and turn to any discussion among the board.
Has the law department looked at the one concern over the variance development plans and final plans?
Yes, they have. And we've done it historically. The Planning Commission has, in 2008, 10, and I believe 2006, for a project that was 8, 4, and I believe 9 acres in size.
Any other questions or comments?
What is going to be the relationship between this facility and the Kettering Emergency Room that's up at 73, which is only
have closed the public hearing, but if you'd like to have Mr. Durham come forward and try to address that, we can ask him to come back. Would you like to? Mr. Friedman?
The little bit that I understand in terms of the relationship is that these are independent units. So, I mean, we've got one, in Spring Grove, there's others in the plan. I think it's just, they're all under the Kettering. Yeah, of course, I also wonder what the effect is going to be on an atrium, which is, of course, right across the street. And that concerns me. I mean, I think that, what's proposed could be very good for the city of Middletown, but I'm not sure how good it is for Atrium or other circumstances. So that falls on the outside of our purview. Right.
That's,
Just like other banks, just like all the
I really don't see how that affects our decision.
I do have one question of staff. The question of the sidewalks and future connections, is that, are we within our purview to make, as part of this approval, that any future connections be made?
Yes, you can do that.
Okay.
Is that a street between CVS and the proposed site for Kettering?
Yes,
Actual street?
It's a public street, right?
that's right. It has no name.
So I would hope we would be able to include that
So on the signage.
if we were to approve this.
The building signage complies with the code as described, correct?
That's correct.
But the large signs that are essentially along the exit ramp.
That's correct.
and on 122, what would the size requirement be to actually comply?
Talking about the height or the
So-
square foot?
Per the zoning district, it's limited, so if there's two non-residential uses, the maximum sign area permitted is 40 square feet and a maximum height of 5 feet.
So maximum height would be 5 feet.
5 feet and a 40 square feet large.
And the height spec on that was, how many feet was that again? Was that 70?
50.
50?
50.
And so essentially, we're creating a de facto billboard by putting this.
It's a large sign.
Did the atrium digital sign across the street require a variance?
It did need a variance, yes.
Yes, it seems like most developments this size, including Atrium, required variances for a lot of their signage, did they not?
That's correct. I don't know specifically
of
for
the
atrium,
scale.
but large-scale projects like this do typically.
Well, we just did the one at the top of the building that was.
Right.
So it seems to me to be understandable, given the scale of these developments and the location and the highway and all of that. That's my personal opinion.
Anything close to the interstate is probably going to require a variance, as opposed to downtown or in
Yeah, I think we would want to be careful, to Mr. Macaulay-Mize's point, that it sort of is a de facto billboard, which, do we still not allow new billboards?
That's it. I mean, that's it. There's restrictions on the billboard square footage. I think my understanding is to add a new billboard, there has to be removal.
That's right.
Of an equivalent amount of square footage. The idea was that we don't proliferate billboards along the
Right.
interstate. So I guess I'm a little concerned that we're just sort of going against the principles of that.
And that's kind of the same question I have about it.
Sign.
Ooh, sorry.
Is that it in the lower?
This is the big one, isn't it?
Yeah,
60
but that's
feet.
low.
Oh, that's it there in the lower right. It's very different looking from a billboard.
Oh, that's the one that's 50 feet. Oh,
Anybody know how tall the billboard signs in general that we have are? recall. It's been too long.
That's their
Taller than this, yeah.
I want to say it's close to 100 to 120 feet.
I'd say so too. It's like this is, yeah. Right, right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's a little less concerning, seeing. And what's the square footage of this? The sign? 50-foot sign?
The 50-foot tall sign, it's 737 square feet per side.
Any other questions or comments before we seek the staff
I guess I'm just
recommendation?
trying to understand with the, if we permit signage along 122, which is the main access point, which will be highly visible, you know, whether the sign along I-75 is actually essential, considering there's going to be, you know, signage on the front of the main building itself. Anyways, that's my reservation.
I don't know that you can see the sign at the top if you're exiting from the south on 75. To be honest, I don't know if you can see the
Yeah, that's
50-foot sign.
if you're going southbound 75, you're not going to see it till you get underneath.
Yeah.
If you're going north on
That's a-
75. Yeah. Coming south is no problem.
I don't think you'll see the smaller signs at all. Going by memory. Any other questions or comments before we get the staff recommendation? Can we get the staff recommendation, please?
Staff recommendation, staff has worked very closely with Kettering Health Network applicants with the submission of this development plan. The property is unique and has a large amount of road frontage, again, along I-75 and State Route 122. Staff believes this project will be a great addition to the east end. Staff recommends approval for a combined preliminary and final development plan with the approval of the following variances. 1, a variance from horizontal scale requirement of 30 feet. 2, a variance from architectural metal requirement. 3, a variance for sign height and size. 4, variance from 30-foot setback requirement due to natural constraints. 5, variance for pedestrian circulation requirements.
Before I call for a motion, I just want to encourage board, since I can't make a motion, to strongly consider the question of pedestrian access. You know, the issue of future access should development occur. Should be part of the motion. And with that, I will ask if anyone has a motion.
I move we approve the plan. As
Subject
is.
to staff
As is.
recommendation.
Let's accept staff recommendation.
Do we have a second?
I second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve as submitted. Mr. Macaulay Myers?
I'll say yes.
Mr. Friedman?
I abstain.
Mr. Nenny?
Yes.
Mr. Langhorn?
Yes.
Ms. Mejias?
Yes.
With a vote of, I believe that is 5-1, abstaining, the vote has been approved as submitted.
4-1.
4-1, my apologies.
Abstentions go with the yes, right?
Abstentions is not, no.
I thought they were okay.
So what, where did we land? I'm sorry.
It's basically 4 in favor, 1 abstain, so
Application's approved, thank you. As soon as I find my agenda. Okay. Item 5 on the agenda is another public hearing, use adjustment case C-3-17, a use adjustment request by Anthony Williams to allow for mechanical work on motorized vehicles and detailed car washing Property is located in the D3 residential zoning district where automotive uses are not permitted. Property is located at 3120 Plymouth Avenue, Middletown, Ohio. The application was tabled by Planning Commission at the April 12, 2017 meeting due to needing additional information. And I'd like to point out that we've been given additional documentation from people in attendance. And quite a record.
Yes. The property analysis, per the Butler County Auditor, the existing building on the property was built in 1947, and the property is a total of .1791 acres and is classified as a commercial automotive service garage. The property is located at the southwest corner of Fernwood Street and Plymouth Avenue in the Mayfield neighborhood. This property is bordered by single-family residence to the south and mixed residential and storage building to the west. Neighborhood was primarily developed in the 1920s through the 1950s and was part of a Lemon Township annexation to the city of Middletown in 1966. A location map. It's in the heart of a residential neighborhood. You can see that by the property itself being zoned D3 residential, as well as all of the property you can see on this map. An aerial of the property, again, it's located at the intersection of Plymouth Avenue and Fernwood Street. Property background, currently there is a car repair business operating on the property without an approved building department permit, as well as planning and zoning department permit. An application was submitted and denied for a car repair business in August 2016 for the property due to a prior use adjustment being approved. Specifically, approval was only for motorcycle sales. This property has formerly had auto repair businesses known as BA Automotive and Assured Automotive. In May 1996, the Planning Commission approved a use adjustment for the expansion of an existing automotive repair business. The approval never happened. However, it was granted subject to the following conditions: no outside repair work, and repair work limited to normal business hours. In October 2014, the current property owner submitted a use adjustment application requesting the existing building on the property be approved for used car and motorcycle sales. The Planning Commission heard the case and found that there were concerns regarding the potential noise levels and traffic generated by the business that it could affect that surrounding residential neighborhood. The Planning Commission approved the use adjustment with several conditions. For sales of motorcycles only, a maximum of 4 motorcycles be stored inside. Parking of vehicles restricted to paved areas. Parking must be 5 feet behind the sidewalk, and the hours of operation 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Size of the motorcycle engine, and no more than 4 customers allowed on the property at any given time. The property background continued. So the last meeting we had here on April 12th, the Planning Commission requested that this be tabled due to needing more information before making a decision. Concerns were cars being parked on the streets and sidewalks, work being performed outside the enclosed building, and the amount of vehicles parked on and around the property. The Planning Commission also requested a parking plan that you will see tonight. It was submitted to us. The applicant worked with Apex Engineering. Staff did receive a complaint from a neighboring property owner who voiced concerns that cars are being parked all over the property and blocking the visibility of the intersection of Plymouth Avenue and Fernwood Street. The property owner did share a photo where there is a car being worked on right outside the property along Plymouth Avenue. The picture was taken on April 29th. There's the photo that was submitted to us. This is just some history of photos. So this was actually a picture of the property in 2014. This is a picture of the property taken April 4th, 2017. You can see there's quite a few cars, many cars located along Plymouth. This picture was taken May 9th. As you can see, there's new parking lot striping that's been added, and a significant amount of cars have been removed from the site and from the public right-of-way. It is still important to note that there is a setback requirement of 5 feet from the right-of-way. These pictures were taken May 9th. These pictures, it looks like my slides got backwards, but anyways, you can see these pictures were taken May 4th, but these are good to show the striping that has been implemented on the property. these two photos. This is at the intersection of Fernwood and Plymouth. And again, you can see that from the May 4th to the May 9th, a significant amount of cars have been removed, and there's more uniform parking. Staff analysis. The applicant is requesting a use adjustment to allow for mechanical work on motorized vehicles and detailed car washing. Historically, this property has been used as an automotive repair business and as well as for motorcycle sales. Per the Planning and Zoning Ordinance, auto repair businesses and automotive uses are not permitted in the D3 dwelling district. Per the Planning and Zoning Ordinance, the number of parking spaces required shall be 2 parking spaces per service bay and 2 parking spaces per each 3 employees. Per the screening requirements, off-street parking lots for more than 5 vehicles shall be effectively screened on each side that faces an office or residential district by a fence, wall, or compact evergreen hedge. It is important to note there is fencing behind the building as well as the property that adjoins to the north. The property will be required to get a permit through the Planning and Zoning Department as well as Building Department and be required to meet any city ordinances outside our zoning code. Failing to get permits and meet the outside ordinance requirements could result in violations. Per the requirements for minimum setbacks, there shall not be any cars nearer again than 5 feet to that public right-of-way. And currently, there are cars, as you saw in the May 4th and May 9th, they are closer than 5 feet to that public right-of-way. Per the Planning and Zoning Ordinance for commercial uses, all businesses, service, repair, processing, display, if not conducted wholly within an enclosed building, shall be enclosed with a solid fence at least 8 feet high. Again, there is a fence behind the building as well to the neighboring property to the north. The hours of operation for any use in a commercial zoning district shall be prohibited from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. if within 500 feet of any D district. This is surrounded by a D district, important to note. We did receive a parking plan. This was submitted to us today from Apex. It's important to note that here is 4 spots proposed to the south, to the west of the building, and then there are 2 on-street parking spots for staff to the south. We worked with Apex, staff did, and we received another parking plan that if the lot to the east of the building were paved, it could get another 6 spaces, as well as those 4, and could allow for up to 10 parking spaces if that lot were paved. Other department comments, per the City of Middletown Engineering Department, they note code section 452, no person shall stand, park a vehicle upon any roadway for principal purpose of washing, polishing, cleaning, greasing, dismantling, or repairing any vehicle, except your minor repairs if your vehicle broke down. No person shall stand or park a vehicle except when necessary to avoid conflict with any traffic. You can't place vehicles on a public sidewalk, public or private driveway, within an intersection within 10 feet of a fire hydrant or crosswalk. You can't place them within 20 feet of a crosswalk in an intersection or within 30 feet of any stop sign, which it's important to note, when we first saw this, they were parked all along that public right-of-way, right before that stop sign. It was actually hard for us to even see the stop sign. But since, they have worked and removed all vehicles from that public right-of-way, as you can see those more recent pictures taken. And that concludes staff report. And we do have the applicant here if you have any specific questions.
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Yes, Patrick Hill, 608 Lincoln Street, Middletown.
The public hearing first?
Yeah, 1 second. For point of order, Joanne, you need to ask if there's any questions for staff, and then we'll open the public hearing, so on and so forth.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from staff or from the board for staff or each other?
Actually, I do have a question on the parking plan then, as laid out, that complies with the distance from public right-of-way requirements?
The only parking spot that might not would be that one to the far west.
Okay.
The one abutting Fernwood.
right here.
I guess,
That would be the
I
only
think that's
one.
the east, right? Or no, might have been that wrong. But, okay. And that's because the sidewalk is considered right of way.
That's right.
Okay. So I guess as currently striped right now, the parking spaces don't comply.
That's right.
What does staff think about the detailing? Do you have a solution? Have you thought about a solution?
For the outside detailing, we would be part of our recommendation is to have a designated area on that parking plan that, that car will be parked there in, respect to the parking spaces on the plan. Maybe just have, it could be in that paved lot. We had given thought to over on that east side of the property, just as long as there's like a designated parking spot for them to be outside.
I'm going to ask a question that might sound silly because I wasn't here last time. This is not currently approved on this lot, right? Is it still approved for the motorcycle business?
Yeah,
Does
it'd be
this fall
approved
under
for the
that?
motorcycle business, that's
We
right.
had said motorcycles only, so this current use has not been approved yet.
That's right.
But it
Just
wasn't for
making sure.
motorcycle repair, it was just for motorcycle sales, right?
Right.
No repair,
Right.
so it's not
This is all-
currently zoned or anything for any kind of
Card.
automotive
Right.
repair.
Specified no repairs.
That's right.
Right, right.
Yeah, it was heard for used car sales and motorcycle sales. However, the planning commission only approved for motorcycle sales.
That's what I was remembering, but I just wanted to make sure. And this striping plan is the striping plan they're proposing?
That's correct.
Including the two
Well-
spaces in the street?
I want to make a note. What was submitted to us by the applicant was just the proposal of striping the 4 spots that you see on your screen. Myself and Jeff reached out to Josh with Apex and asked him, hey, if they paved that lot, how many parking spots additionally could they get? Because we had discussed that before. We were all here. And Josh at Apex made us, added if this were paved, and added an additional 6 spaces.
Well, it looks like they resurfaced the lot and striped it already. That doesn't comply with that plan.
Right.
Yeah, they just put some stripes down.
That was before that they worked with Apex, to my knowledge.
And is there actually a curb cut leading into that?
That was my
potential
next
expansion?
question. Where they have the 2 parking.
Yes, there's a curb cut here, where the 2 proposed parking spaces are here. So curb cut here, here, and
You will park in front of a curb cut? Is
that's
that
what
access?
they've proposed. Staff would not approve, recommend approval for parking any
would be only-
staff cars.
Access to the future proposed paved lot.
Right. We would want those staff cars up here.
Why is there even an apron there? There's no, that's the unpaved part, isn't it? Am I looking at a house there, probably?
Probably a house there at some point.
So there was a driveway that was just taken out, probably.
Right, it's an existing. And for the longest time, as history pictures showed, there was a lot of gravel in there that used that drive apron, but since it's just grown in primarily with grass.
And if paving was going to be put in there, would any sort of runoff study or anything have to be done before paving requirements, city engineer? Is the square footage?
So if it exceeded 7,500 square feet, it would, which,
I'm trying to calculate how many feet that would be.
is that close to that or no? I wouldn't think so.
Give me a second, I can make a quick calculation.
Well, so,
Right, 50,
say we're 50 wide in one direction, so where'd that put us?
at least 50 by 60.
150,
So this is 7,800 square
or
feet.
50 by 50.
7,800 square feet. Minus the radius. That's a little less than that. And what did you say, Mr. Nichols? 7,500 square feet is the cutoff. 7,500? This is larger than that.
So is that based on change or total paved area?
Oh, okay, so it's about half of that then.
Yeah, so essentially that's the entire size of the lot, then 150 by 50. Seven. Yeah, correct. So that wouldn't be required then, okay.
Any other questions of staff or any other discussion? Okay, Not, we'll open the public hearing and ask anyone who would like to come forward and speak in support of the application to come forward, state their name and address.
We'll try this again. State your name and address for the record.
Patrick Hill, 608 Lincoln Street, Middletown, Ohio.
Just tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, I did. I'm here on behalf of ABW Automotive. I came here last time. I really didn't know what I was up against. We really didn't know. We got a building, and the person we got it from, which is our fault, I'm not blaming the person we leased it from. His name is not even important at this point. Told us that it was zoned for what we were trying to do, but we didn't know. So that's why when we came, it was tabled, and I appreciate the board tabling it. But what we've done since, and I've submitted paperwork, is we removed every car off the unpaved area that was told that we needed to do. The striping, I would like to talk about the striping that we did. There were parking spaces already there. We just striped them so we could see what it was. So we would just have some knowledge. We didn't know anything about the surveying till Ms. Combs and Jeffrey told us what we needed to do. So we had Apex draw us up a plan. Like I said, the striping was done before we met with Apex because they were already there per that motorcycle shop. So we just striped them so we could see for ourselves what we were up against. And then when Apex came out, they said, well, Mr. Hill, you need to be able to drive the cars out. You need a lane. So a point of sight is what we needed. So we consulted with him, and he showed us now, so now we know. But we've removed all the cars off the unpaved area. I've submitted just a brief detail of what we're going to do. I've also submitted that we are certified with the state of Ohio. We have our EIN, and we're certified now with the state. We have a checking account that we're going to open up tomorrow if we're able to continue to operate. We came into something that we didn't really know what we were doing. And with the help of the city and the planning commission, we tried to correct everything that was brought to our attention. We do have about 8 cars in this area here that's already paved. This area right here to the left of where the building stops is already paved. The unpaved area here is where all the cars were, and we removed them. We had a lot of cars here, and we talked to the neighbors, and they told us there's too many cars. We can't see coming around the corner. So we tried to eliminate as many as we could, and we got them off the lot. I asked Apex to tell me where we could park staff parking. It's not showing it correct. The staff parking that he gave us is actually beyond the unpaved area. There's a telephone pole right there at the end of the unpaved area. And that's where the site that he said we could park our employees' cars would be. Nowhere in front of the unpaved area would we park. It would be behind. There's a telephone pole right there directly where the black line is, where the unpaved area stops. And that's where we were proposing to park the employees' cars. There'll be no cars parked from that area all the way down and all the way around as far as what we propose to do. We won't have any of our employees' cars. Any cars that we're working on will be parked from this broad side over here where the unpaved area stops all the way around to the corner. We won't have any cars there. We do have an opening here, a curb opening, an opening here, and there is one in front of the paved area. However, we're not going to park there, and we're not going to have any cars there at this point in time. So we are just trying to do what we need to do to stay open. We have 2 mechanics, 1 receptionist, and 1 car detailer. The car detailing has stopped. We're waiting on the planning commission to give us an appropriate place where we could wash a car. And that was one thing that was in question. But we've tried to comply as best as we can. We have limited funds. We're a small business. It's only 6 of us. We've taken care of the surveying, so we know exactly how many parking spaces we can have. The question about this parking space here, we're not engineers and we're not surveyors. So we just took what Apex told us because that's their profession. That's what they specialize in, that we could park 4 vehicles there. If the city says no, then that's fine. However, we just took the professional's point of view, and he said we could park 4 cars there. So that's what we thought would be okay if we get approved to continue business. We're not here to be an eyesore to the community. We're just a small group of people trying to make an honest living, do quality work for the customers at an affordable price. We did have a mass amount of cars on there, and I apologize to the city and the neighbors. You know, and we've talked to neighbors, and they told us the truth. Too many cars. Get them off. It's too many. We don't want you selling cars there, not a used car lot. We just want to be able to work on cars, make an honest living, and provide finances to our employees. But like I said, we have our certification with the state of Ohio. We have our EIN number. We've tried to comply as much as we could with the limited money that we have. You know, we hired Apex to help us. They consulted with Ms. Combs, and we're trying to abide by all the laws and rules that we can. All we asking for is a chance to continue on. If you want to table it without an approval, I understand. But we went from zero. When I came here the first time, I had nothing but a hope and a prayer. I came back this time with documents, engineers, EIN numbers, state of Ohio certifications. I've come back with some things that shows that we're trying to do what we need to do to honor the city's plan, and we want to fit in the community. We're not trying to be an eyesore. We're just trying to make an honest living. Thank you.
Actually, before you leave, can I ask a question again? I just trying to clarify where you thought the employee parking spots were. You said on the other side of the pole, which
to the right, the very dark line, the end right here where the unpaved area is, where those 4 parking spaces are there, right there. There's a pole right there.
So on the street, right?
It's supposed to be showing it behind there.
So you're talking about essentially to the west on the street,
Yes.
on the street parking.
Yes, not even in front of our business, behind there. Because the building next to us, it's going to be condemned or it's vacant, and I don't understand why as employees we can't park there, because the employees' cars are all tagged, inflated, licensed, insured and everything. So we just figured we could park from there 3 cars behind there. And it's not an obstruction either way, because Apex said that we could park there and it wouldn't obstruct anyone. But like I said, we did start out with a lot of cars, and I apologize to the city, to the neighbors. But we were doing good work, and we just took on more work than we could handle.
I guess, just for your awareness, I don't know if you've been by the property today.
So I did.
Okay, because on Plymouth Street, I guess this morning, I went through on my way to work, and I saw there was an unplated vehicle parked on Plymouth. Pretty much where you're talking about the employee parking right now.
So
It parked in front of the building that was tagged. So I guess I was a little concerned to see essentially another untagged vehicle still back out on the street. And I saw your lot was pretty much maxed out, so I understand how you probably ended up putting it there, but.
However, I would like to say this. When you came to that property and you seen that untagged vehicle, it could have just got there to ask us about repairing it. It had inflatable tires. A customer drove it there to ask us about repairing it, and that's why it was there. And immediately, when I arrived and Mr. Williams arrived and we seen it was unplated, we told him you must remove it from here immediately. So that customer had to remove that car from in front of our property. But we couldn't stop him from bringing it there. But once we seen it, reacted and did what we needed to do.
Okay. I guess just point out the concern that there has to be adequate space for new customers' arrival, too. And that was my thought. That especially if someone comes in, you know, when you are there in control, they need to have some place where they could put the vehicle. Okay.
So Patrick, when you say we, it's you and Anthony?
It's me and Anthony Williams, and we have 2 mechanics and 1 receptionist.
Okay, how long have you been involved? Because I know you.
For about 6 months.
6 months. And how long has Anthony been there?
About, I think it's 8 or 9 months.
8 or 9 months.
So we had to acquire the property, do paperwork with the landlord. We purchased equipment. We have spent about $9,500 in lifts and different automotive tools, equipment, and our mechanics are ASC certified. So it's not like we're running a bootleg mechanic shop.
So did you have a company before last month? You just got your LLC.
We had the name, but we had not done what we needed to do. We didn't have the finances to pay the $155 to get it certified with the state of Ohio, because we put our money.
How were you doing business before you had an LLC that you could report and be compliant with the city.
We did wrong. We weren't doing what we needed to do. And I
'Cause it's obvious that you had a
apologize.
used car shop a lot, right?
No, never a used car lot. It was just strictly
You have
brake
two- If you have
jobs.
2 bays in the garage and you have
Yes.
30 cars out there waiting to get in, that seems kind of unusual to me.
But what happened was, I know a lot of people, Mr. Williams knows a lot of people, our mechanics know a lot of people, and the prices that we were given, the word of mouth, and it just came.
Yeah.
You know? And when Ms. Combs and Mr. Jeffrey came out, they said, this is ridiculous. You have to clean it up. And we've tried to do what we needed to do. But we took on something, and it went crazy. People want us to work on their cars, but we couldn't do the volume of cars that were there. It wasn't that they were there to storage or anything. We were going to work on them, but we just couldn't handle it. It was too many.
How
And we
long,
didn't want to turn the cars away because that's future money, so we...
Well, yeah,
Sit
you
there.
can tell them that you have an appointment next Tuesday.
Sir.
You don't have to park the
We were
car here
wrong.
for a week.
We were wrong. I'm not going to debate.
Okay.
We were wrong, 100%.
All right, yeah.
Yes, sir.
how long ago did you start business here?
I think it's been about 9 months. I came in 6 months ago.
Any other questions for Mr. Hill? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak in support of the application? If not, is there anyone who'd like to come forward and speak in opposition?
Good evening. Will you please state your name and address for the record?
My name is Frank Good, 2101 Fernwood Street.
And you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth?
I do. I don't know where to start in correcting Mr. Hill's some of his statements, but the length of time that Mr. Williams has occupied that building is in excess of 18 months, probably closer to 2 years. So just a point of clarification. I've lived at this Fernwood Street address for 60 years. During that time, I have witnessed each occupant of the 2 properties now owned by Mr. Frazee on both corners, 3120 Plymouth and 2033 Fernwood. To my knowledge, the only occupants of these properties who have applied for and was granted a use adjustment prior to moving in was the motorcycle shop. The other occupants were forced to leave due to multiple violations, which resulted in no use adjustments being granted. I would like to state that Mr. Williams first moved into the property. There were no problems with the operation of his business. Somewhere along the line, he decided to expand his business by buying older cars, repairing them, and hoping to sell them. These vehicles were stored on the grassy area. A previous occupant, which did the same thing, resulted in a lot being filled with vehicles which were surrounded by weeds taller than the cars, not operational, for sale, and a total eyesore. Mr. Hill flew in from Colorado. He appears to be associated with Mr. Williams, as he stated. He seems to be interested in correcting the concerns of the previous meeting. He introduced himself to my wife and I. He indicated he has an architect to establish the legal parking area. He also said all of the vehicles would be removed from the grassy area. Use my fumbling around. I've got essential tremors and I have a hard time, especially under stress.
No stress.
He asked what we thought it would take the neighbors to approve the use adjustment. We told him all it would take is to follow the use adjustment requirements. As of this morning, the cars have been removed from the grassy area on the west side of the building. There appears to be 8 vehicles parked on the paved area. but the line of sights have not been defined. That line of sight I'm talking about, if you're not familiar with line of sight, I've got papers that will show you what is required for a line of sight. And some of those lines that you saw on earlier pictures that were drawn in definitely are in a space that would be excluded from that line of sight. I won't bore you with much what I'm sure you have in your packets on this case, but I do have photos, Middletown Code of Ordinance, and state requirements for line of sight requirements if any of you need them. In order to spare you from repetitive comments from neighbors, I would ask the neighbors in attendance who are in agreement to stand up, please. Thank you. I'd like to thank you for your consideration and your service.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Good?
So what I hear, your main concern is that the vehicles parking up close to the sidewalk and not set back 5 feet, is that?
That's one of them, and the line of sight and the parking of vehicles on the roadway. And there had been work done on that, on the side of the road along there. There's work being done out in front of the bays. Even today, cars with hoods up and work being done outside. I thought the work had to be done inside the building.
Part of the requirement that we discussed was to work only on vehicles inside the garage.
That's not happening.
Nothing outside.
That's not happening.
Okay.
So, any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
For the record, all those that stood up, have you all signed in? Okay, before you all leave, could you all see me so I can write down your names for the record as those who participated somewhat in this meeting? Maybe not speaking, but participating to some extent. Thank you.
Is there any? I'll give you a chance in a minute. Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak in opposition?
Speak your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Rita Sabo. I live at 2105 Fernwood Street.
And you promise to tell the truth and the whole truth?
Absolutely. My main concern is my 97-year-old mother passed away a year ago. One night in April, I think it was, of this year, and before she passed, we had to have several ambulances and stuff. One night this year, I was sitting in April, I think it was, I was sitting in my living room with my husband, and this red car pulls up and blocks my driveway. And I said, no, that ain't gonna happen, because if Mom was still here, or if one of us needed an ambulance, we can't get out. So I got in my car, and I backed it up to the edge of the driveway, and I laid on the horn. And the lady moved up, proceeded to park in front of the fire hydrant, and looked at me and said, oh, sorry. Sorry wouldn't have been the word if my mother had been there and needed an ambulance. I have a 2-year-old granddaughter that we have 2 or 3 days a week. They have children on that lot running in and out those cars. That is so dangerous. And chasing a dog and all this. If my 2-year-old granddaughter got out of my fenced yard, she didn't stand a chance. And when the woman in the car proceeded to pull up by the fire hydrant, they had several other cars on the other side. So when I went to back out of my driveway, I could not almost get up the street. And like I said, if my mother was still here, God rest her, I probably would have been in jail, because nothing comes before my mother. That's all I'm going to say. I just don't like the parking situation. And when you go up to the corner, you can't see.
Thank you. Any questions of Ms. Sabo? Thank you very much.
And he knows my mother.
Is there anyone else who hasn't spoken who'd like to come forward and speak in opposition of this application? Okay, if not, if you'd like to come forward and...
Yeah, Patrick Hill again, 608 Lincoln, Middletown, Ohio. I'm not disputing anything that the neighbors have said. I did go and speak to the gentleman and his wife, and I wanted to know, because I did fly in from Colorado to try to take care of this scenario. Because I am a silent partner in the business. My part is just financial and try to help keep it going. And things were erratic at first, and we've tried to correct what we need to correct. The children that the young lady is speaking about belong to the families that work there. They're used to being around cars. So for them to run around cars is nothing to them. But it's not safe. They could get hurt, which could cause them to go to the hospital, push the strain on community through the medical cards. I understand that. But those children are familiar with that area. And we do have a dog. It's a little dog. It might bite somebody. I don't know. We don't know that. However, it's always tied up. And they do walk around. Sometimes they do let it run a little bit. But I don't think it's ever bitten anyone or attacked anyone. And I apologize for the young lady that parked in front of your driveway. I don't know anything about it, and I apologize. However, these are things that happened prior. We're trying to correct everything we can. We did submit paperwork to the neighbors. I don't know if this young lady got one. I really don't know. But we handed out a lot of paperwork just stating what we're trying to do. If you had any complaints, you could call Ms. Combs, Mr. Jeffrey themselves direct outside of us, which people did. We're just trying to have a viable business in the community and not be an eyesore, a hindrance to anyone's life. But my only thing is with the parking, like I said, we didn't know. We're not engineers. There were already stripes there when we got the building, so we just enhanced them, which was wrong based on what Apex has now showed us. But even with the engineers, the committee is saying they're wrong too. So how's a novice supposed to know when an engineer doesn't know? You're saying the first parking space is wrong, and he said it's okay. So we don't know, and he's an engineer, he should know. So there's a lot of things that are going on, but we're trying to comply. And we're really hoping that we can work things out with the neighbors. We're open always to the neighbors, and we go talk to them to try to tell us what we're doing wrong. And I apologize to anyone in the Mayfield area that we have caused a hardship to. But we took on something, and I'm not making no excuses. We're trying to do what we need to do to rectify it. We're really trying. And the other cars that are parked here, we'll make sure we get those off if we're allowed to. If you table it again for another meeting, or if you allow us to continue our business, we will make sure all these cars right here in the front will be removed. We have no problem doing what we need to do. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who'd like to come forward and speak? If not, we will close the public hearing at this time and see if there's any more discussion to be had before we get a staff recommendation.
We can attach conditions to this, I assume. Okay.
Okay. Actually, I know we were given the requested parking plan documentation, and I just wanted to point out here, there was the comment in here, there were no more than 8 automobiles on paved area at any given time, 3 of which employees and 5 repairs. This was provided to us by you, sir? Okay.
Prior to the Apex telling us the correct amount of cars we could have.
Okay. This was,
Today.
okay, so this was your proposal?
Yes. But we're willing to do whatever the city or the neighbors would want us to do.
Okay. And I'm sorry, Ashley, could you show the overhead view of that plan again? Because I guess as this plan, actually, the next one over. So as it stands right now, there it looks like there are 6 spots to the right in the current unpaved area and 4 to the left, but one of which encroaches beyond the restriction.
Please be advised, this plan was provided by Apex to show hypothetical if that area were to be
Yeah.
paved.
We reached out to Josh with Apex to say, hey, we had discussed at our planning commission last time, the idea of paving that lot. What would that look like?
Yes.
So what was actually submitted was the 4 spots, and then just leaving that grassy area. But like I said, we worked with Josh with Apex to try to help out And that's if they did pave that lot. There could be additional 6 over there.
We wanted to try to give planning commission the most complete picture possible,
Appreciate
so.
Thank you.
So basically, this new plan would alleviate the problem with the stop sign there between the two streets as far as line of vision to see what's coming the other way, correct?
That's right.
Okay.
So zoning requires 2 parking spaces. You've probably been through this already. How many parking spaces are actually required?
So there should be 2 parking spaces per service bay and 2 parking spaces per each 3 employees.
So in other words, there's
2.5.
4, there's 2 service bays, so that'd be 4 for the service bays and additional 2 for the employees.
That'll get us to 8 parking spaces, correct?
8, yeah.
And we didn't ask Mr. Hill, but should we go forward with this, you would be willing to pave the other lot?
That's what I brought up in the last.
Okay, no, that's okay, that's
That
okay.
we would be willing to do
That's
that.
fine.
If that was a
Okay.
condition that the city would allow us, we have access
Fine.
to Mr. Udell High Tower,
Okay,
and we also have affordable paving over at the university that would be willing to help us
thank you.
get that paved. But it was said that we need to do some surveying or some other things which Apex will help us with as far as can we do what we
Okay.
can, drainage, runoff. We don't know, we're not engineers.
Okay, thank you. I guess. Sure.
Will the line of sight lines be drawn on this property like they are on the opposite corner to show that there's no parking to be permitted there?
Yes.
The setback or the setbacks or the line of sight?
Line of sight,
I assume we could have that done at some point,
Require that,
yeah.
okay?
We would
Work with
we'd have to
Apex.
pay to have someone come out and do it, but we just got the information.
I understand.
Okay.
The other,
What we need to do.
the other part of that question is concerning if they pave that grassy area. Right now, we're looking at 6 parking spaces all the way against the back. I know in my heart that that's not going to be the end of it. Will there be some kind of restrictions placed on parking in that area, if that's allowed?
I would assume they would have to park in the striped spaces if it were allowed.
I would assume that too.
We're not doing a variance on the 5-foot setback, right?
Yeah,
So anything,
it's the 5 foot.
everything has to
setback
be 5 feet away from the sidewalk. So we're
And
not
the-
doing a variance on that.
Sidewalk and property lines?
However, if you approve the parking plan as submitted, then we would enforce only those parking spaces be utilized.
Only
There
vehicles.
should be no more parking in any of the other areas.
And it's the
Unless you do add that designated detailing area.
And the
Just keep that
setback from the property lines are also 5 feet for parking,
From the right of way.
from the property lines.
Right. That's
So I
correct.
see a 5-foot dimension
Yes.
there at the property line.
Yes, they are.
And that's the required setback for
Yes.
parking?
Yeah, there's just the one spot over there on the left that's not 5 feet.
Yes, and actually,
I'm looking at
it's close, but I know,
Apex is
It's the
drawn.
same thing. This is Apex.
yeah, looking at the,
This is before they did the striping.
looking at the building this morning, I noticed, there were, a few chairs, a grill and things stored next to the building on the east edge of the building. It looks like that's maybe your employee break area, or maybe where they fix their lunch or something, so, you know, there's probably not room for a full parking space at that last spot anyways, at least not to get the 4 in as marked. So I would recommend that be reduced to 3, so you have sufficient room for your line of sight and enough room for your employees to have some space. But I'd also encourage, though, that I noticed it was essentially an upholstered chair sitting out there, which I think might even be part of our, at least in some communities, I know it's a violation to have that type of furniture.
Let me ask a question on that. Is there anybody living there? Has anybody lived there, or is anybody planning on living there? Does anybody live there
You
for
mean
week,
sleep there?
temporarily?
Is it livable?
Is it? Well, that doesn't.
You're talking about this building.
I'm talking about this building right here. It's got a grill and an upholstered chair and kids running around and dogs and
Feels like a home.
is it a home or is it a business?
It's a business, but we do have one dog. And, you know, just the cliche, most junkyards or auto mechanic shops, M&M towing, everybody has at least one little dog. But if we don't, if it's a problem with us having a dog, we will remove the dog. We'll do whatever we need to do. That dog is not, if the commission allows us to further on, you say no animals, we're not gonna stop our livelihood over pets.
Right.
We'll remove it. So nobody's living there. The dog just brings comfort. We rub on it, we play with it.
I guess the problem I have with this application is when we looked at the motorcycle shop, we were adamant that, we were concerned with that. And we were adamant that no more than that type of activity happened there. This is so much more than that type of activity. And in my opinion, although I feel for you with what you're trying to do with your business, and I would want you to be successful, and I believe I said this last time, this type of operation doesn't belong here. It's too small, in my opinion. I thought we pushed it to the limit with the restrictions we put on the motorcycle business. And this is so much more than that. I can't see. The public hearing is closed. I'm gonna have to ask you to refrain from comment, but unless someone on the board would like to.
John, I agree with you. I mean, I really appreciate what Patrick's doing here and trying to make it better. And nothing, no one's more supportive of small business than I am. The concern I have is enforcement. We haven't been able to enforce it. I don't know that the city has resources to babysit this site to make sure it's in compliance. The neighborhood doesn't want it. I will say that I was totally against this, and Patrick's brought some very good points up, but he is a silent partner. And the operator's still there, which concerns me.
All of that is true, but also this site is too small to accommodate the scale of business they're trying to do. It's gonna spill over. It's just, it's the nature of the beast. It's too small. Anybody else have any?
Now, is that lot
comment?
going to be paved?
He said he's willing to pave it, and I'm saying even with that paved, I believe it's.
I think that's something else that needs to be done to provide the additional paved area that's required to operate the business.
But note, they were parking on that grass area, and it was still overflowing.
Well, we know now why they were doing that.
Too much business?
No, because the guy was buying cars to fix
Oh,
up
yes,
and
yes,
sell.
and he has stopped.
I mean, it was a used car lot,
Which they're not gonna do.
that's what I heard. And they said they're not gonna do that. And as far as the size go, I mean, how much room do you need to pull a car into a garage and fix the engine or change the oil? I mean,
Well, you
I
have
don't
to have-
understand the size.
You have to have area to store the car until somebody comes and picks it up. People drop off their cars, even if it's, you know, making appointments. Those things happen with this kind of business. I can't go pick up my car right when they finish repairing it, because I work. So I'm gonna have to pick it up after work or
Right.
the next day. They need that kind of space. Unless they're only gonna work on 2 cars a week, or maybe 5 cars a week, or 3 cars.
Or a day, yeah.
I think,
My car left at car repair for a couple of days.
I think just, since this is a variance that would stay with the property too, I just think we have to think long-term as well, that, you know, whatever your best intentions are right now, we have to consider whether the next owner would comply, considering this will stay with the property. And any approval we would make should have restrictions on it so that we feel it doesn't intrude overly much on the neighbors. I was pleased to hear that the neighbors were relatively receptive if, you know, if restrictions were placed and they were complied with. I think that's very good faith by them, and considering what they've lived with for such a long time, I'm surprised they're even willing to concede with that. So I think that speaks well to what your conversations have been with them. I hope that the active partner also has that same level of concern and relationship with the neighborhood, though.
The thing is about policing it, you know, like was mentioned, that the city doesn't have the resources. They don't really have to. I think the neighbors will. Because if they start seeing this stuff happening again, they're gonna call the city.
Well, I'm sure they have up to this
Yeah.
point. You know.
Well, I think they still would if it doesn't, if they don't follow the adjustment and the restrictions.
Then we have to send a city staff member out there to
Right.
rectify it, and then maybe 2 weeks later, we're out there again.
Well, it depends. I mean, is there like a limit on violations and at some point you can shut it down? There's too many and they don't
Well,
apply?
I mean, from the violation side, it goes to court and then it resets itself, so then if another violation goes to court, resets.
Starts over.
If it becomes such a large problem, then this commission can always revoke.
So there is that option.
There is an option.
There's, anything you grant, you can always revoke.
Oh, I did not realize that.
I didn't know that.
And,
Based on violation, based on,
Based on continuous nuisances or what have you.
and just suddenly one day say, okay, we've
So
had
if, so if we
enough.
give them a variance to work on cars and detail cars in this location, and they violate what they're agreeing to here, then we can take away the variance. That's it.
I believe so, yes.
So I believe in that case, then I assume you would bring it before a commission and
Well,
tell us this is what's going on.
that's where, I've never had to do that before.
Yeah.
So in my experience, I know I'm almost positive it is possible. But who would bring it as the applicant? I don't know if it'd be the city or a neighbor or what.
Okay.
I'm almost certain I've heard of this happening before in Trotwood, I believe. But I did not get the specifics of how and why.
Now, the requirement is going to be for the mechanical work to be done inside the building, correct?
That is already a established ordinance. And
Where is the detailing and washing area going to be? Have we established that?
No.
No.
I think that's something that needs to be established also.
Do you have any suggestions or any parameters for where that would be located? Not
actually, I guess.
put it there, but the parameters, do you want it screened, do you want it?
I guess my suggestion would be, I mean, right now, there is a portion of, especially with the proposed paving extension, immediately to the west of the building where it is fenced to the back and also to the west. If you had the detailing immediately adjacent to the building right there and restricted it to that last parking space, it'd be relatively unobtrusive.
That's a good spot.
I don't know if there's any water at that point, but that seems to me about the only place that would sort of get it out of the way so that it's not going to be.
Probably those 2 parking places. But that's really the only one.
Yeah.
So if they did that, that would have to be reserved for detailing, and then they'll need 8 parking spaces.
And really, I mean, the only acceptable option I see, and actually it's almost in line with what they're saying as far as 3 employee and 5 repairs, is that the 3 parking spots to the east would be reserved for employee parking only. And the area to the right would be strictly for service vehicles, with the spot closest to the building for detailing. And once again, all service has to be inside the building, and no service taking place outside
And
the
they're
building.
still short 1 space.
What's that?
They need 8 parking spaces.
8, that would give them just 8. They would have the,
You think they can wash and detail a car in 1 parking space? Is that enough space to wash and detail a car? Seems like they might need 2, or at least 1.5. Not a lot of space. It's 9 feet wide. And the car is taking up at least
Well-
6 of those feet.
I think the comment also was no more than 8 automobiles on the lot at any given time. So that would be 1 empty spot associated with it.
I'm just looking at this layout here that's showing 10 parking spaces, and one of them has to go away because it's in the line of sight and too close to the property line. So that leaves you with 9 parking spaces. If you take 1.5 to 2 spaces away from that for a detailing space, you're left with 7 parking spaces, and they need 8. That's what I'm saying. So to go with 7, we'd have to grant variance. They actually need 7.5, but we're
Put that right?
calling it 8.
Because it's, what's, 2 spots for every 3 employees, is that correct? And
2, is it 2 for every 3?
Parking spaces per each 3 employees.
Oh, 2 for each 3, okay.
I thought they only had 3
And they only have 3
employees.
Oh, okay,
employees, so they only,
I read that wrong, so
Okay.
they would be good, 7
okay,
parking
okay, I thought I'd done the math there.
My apologies. I was thinking it was 8 parking spaces. So then they could,
So they could double up the space in the end to make that the detailing spot, and the other,
and they would
essentially
have
other
4
4
there and 3
would be
on
actually
the
service
east.
vehicles then?
Well, what they could do is make an extra wide area down here by the building on the end, because they'd have to shift all the spaces to the left
That's what he
by
said.
5, to eliminate that last one, they'd be 5 feet from the right-of-way. So you could actually make the last one bigger to be able to detail there.
I think you were trying to do it on the,
Yeah, I guess I was just trying to get.
You were looking at the other side, but that, to me, that would make a little more sense over there from that standpoint.
I do want to make mention, we're looking in the zoning code, we can't find the exact code where it says you can revoke something. So if you were to say, we're going to give a trial period of 6 months, and if they haven't, we will revoke, you could say contingent upon if this is approved by the law department. Because if, you approve it, we could strike it based on, getting law's opinion on that. But we can't find it right off, but it could be hidden like many things in our code. But just want to make a note of that.
That's something I hadn't run into before either, so.
Yeah.
okay, so is there any more discussion? Nothing I've heard has really changed my opinion, but is there any more discussion? Or any-
And Joanne, I guess since we were both heavily involved in the motorcycle discussion, and I think I was one that suggested a lot of the restrictions on that one too, just with the idea of trying to make this fit with a residential neighborhood as much as possible, so. I guess an auto shop is not what I would prefer to see in this location. I think if I would approve it, I would only approve it with very severe restrictions, with the understanding that compliance, 100% compliance is expected, and if there are any complaints, it's gonna be a big problem, so.
Are we ready for the staff recommendation? Sure. Can we have the staff recommendation, please?
We have strong reservations, given the history and the continued use as a car repair shop and detailing. Given the size and just that history of what we've seen, but I know the applicant's made, progress towards cleaning the property up and worked with the neighbors. So we're recommending to you, if you choose to approve this use adjustment, we would like the following conditions and any strict conditions that you would add. So 1, pave the area to, when you're looking at that plan, it would actually be to the east of the building, as shown. That adds those 6 spaces. A maximum number of cars be allowed on the property at any given time. The apex, again, plan shows 10 spots with that paved area. Staff recommends no more than 12 vehicles on the property. That would include those in the bays being worked on, because there's 2 spots in there as well. And that would also include that outside detailing area, if you so choose to have one. 3, a designated parking spot for each car be parked. And with that, those striping that was added by the applicant be removed. If that's not a part of your approval, we would ask those be covered. That 4, no on-street parking be permitted for employees. They be required to park on the property. 5, no cars for the business, customer again, or employee be parked on the street. All of the cars for this business be kept on the property and in those designated parking spots. If approved, we want a parking plan to be kept on file, and it would be heavily enforced.
So you're not removing the 1 space that was too close to the property line?
We would ask that, I would like to add another one into that. We would want no junk motor vehicles on the property, and that there be no cars for sale on the property. And along with your statement there, that you must meet that 5-foot setback from the public right away. Thank you for
That would
reminding me.
remove it from 10 spots.
Right,
to
and
9
remove that
spots.
parking spot. If it does not comply, I know it's close, I can't see it on.
Confused about that last spot here. Apex did this thing, isn't that 5 feet? that
Does it?
line between
Okay,
the
because I couldn't
sidewalk
see
and-
by the plan that they gave me. So if
looking
it meets
at-
that, then
That's
5
the
feet,
previous one.
it could be fine to stay there.
Can you pull that back up on the screen? I thought it said 3 feet on that side, but I'm blind.
That's not 5 feet?
I thought
It
it,
says 32 this way or
yeah, I
something.
could have sworn I saw 3 feet. Well, if you consider this is 5 feet, I don't see how that, 5 feet.
If that's 5 feet.
If this is scalable.
What's right in front of that apron?
Yeah, I don't know, from my point of view, we have 3 employees, 3 employee parking spots are sufficient.
Right.
I'd like to keep the number of cars down to, 8 on the lot and 2 in the bays, and no more of 10 on site, maximum. That's even maybe a little bit more than I was thinking.
So staff is recommending and requiring that they pave that grassy area?
If that is something you're willing to do. Okay.
They're willing to do
We could recommend
it.
that be paved.
So the detailing spot is included in the 8 spaces.
The detailing spot would be included in the 8 spaces,
So if it needed to be a little wider, it's still 1 space.
Yeah.
and I would also expect that the 3 employee spots be marked as employee spots too, just so it's clear to customers that the expectations are employee parking areas.
Okay, we've heard staff's recommendation, and we've had some follow-up discussion. Do we have a motion?
No, there wasn't a recommendation.
Yeah.
Staff's
That was my recommendation, that's right.
Did you want to change anything regarding the numbers?
The staff's recommendation, I believe, was up to a maximum of 12, and so I would request that number be reduced to, I'm going to calculate here, a total of 10, where there would be 3 employee spots, 5 customer lot spots, and up to, with 2 additional in the bay, but all parking to be done within marked spaces.
And the designated,
Given the designated parking plan,
no,
reducing.
the designated detailing space
And 1 designated detailing space
as one
included.
of those 5
Yeah,
parking
is
spaces.
one of the 5 parking customer spots. So you could have on the lot, on the premises at any one time, a maximum of 7 customer vehicles.
So you're asking them to modify their
Yes, I requested.
recommendation to
Well,
include that?
you shouldn't be
or are
asking us,
making
you
a
should be
motion?
asking yourselves. We're not the
Okay.
ones to make the decision here.
Or are you making a motion to modify?
Is that a motion you're making?
Well, yes, I think it's a motion. It is a motion, yes.
You're making a motion to modify that along with their other
David,
recommendations.
can you repeat everything you just said?
Yes,
I'll do my best.
beginning to end.
So I'd like to make a motion that we modify staff's recommendation so that to the east side of the building, designated employee parking areas only, a maximum of 3 spots in that location. On the west side of the building, that the area be paved, a maximum of 5 spots there, which includes a detailing area adjacent to the building, and no more than 7 customer vehicles on the lot, or on the premises at any given time, which includes vehicles which are stored inside in bays. And then all other stipulations that you provided for within your recommendation.
Didn't we also have something to do with the revocation you wanted to add to this too?
Yes, and that would be contingent on the.
Law department.
Law department's review to confirming that
And
revocation.
what duration of time would you want? Trial period?
Trial period. I guess that becomes difficult because of the paving that's required too. I guess, given sufficient time for paving and trial period, I would like to see, I think 6-month trial period I think is sufficient, and at which point we can review whether there's been violations.
When would the 6 months start? Would it start after the paving?
I guess that's
Let it
the question. I would actually
Start
start from
now.
today.
Okay.
I would start from approval of the
I
motion.
just want to make it clear. Okay.
Good point.
That's fine.
And this is all subject to the law department review of the revocation in case there's violations.
So essentially, it's not an approval granted unless the law department says that we can withdraw. So essentially, the applicant would want to wait until law department review before they do expenditures for paving, I assume.
So if the law department were to say this is not possible, since our code does not clearly define it, this would be a denial, is what you're saying?
You put me in a tough spot. I hadn't really thought that
I
through.
think it has to be.
I hadn't really thought that
Past
through.
violations. You don't have any choice. If there's violations,
It's putting control back into Mr. Hill.
right.
He has control over compliance, right?
Okay, so, just to clarify then, so you're saying that if the law department does not agree that a revocation is possible, then this approval would actually be a denial of the application?
Well, one of your conditions would.
With the contingency?
We could enforce that condition. I mean, it would just be struck from your conditions, and then it would just be held to everything but that 6-month trial. So it'd be able to be just always with the property.
Okay.
Okay.
The other.
Yeah, I guess that's what I was looking for.
Okay.
The 6-month trial basically is kind of a stopgap, so even if the law department were to say revoke is impossible, you guys approved it, 6 months later this comes back and depending on the violation, accumulation if any at all, then you could review the case and make final judgment.
Oh, so the 6 month is possible even without that
You can,
trial period?
yes, it's
Okay.
been done in the past. by this
Actually,
commission.
let's leave it at that then. Let's say that we will look at this as a 6-month trial period.
Be the November meeting.
Oh, that'll be fine.
Yeah.
So, was that clear then? Yeah, so,
Do we have a second?
Yes.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Mr. McCauley Myers,
yes.
Ms. Mejias,
No.
Mr. Nenny,
Yes,
Mr. Langhorn,
Yes.
Mr. Gross,
Yes.
and Mr. Friedman.
Yes.
Okay.
Application's been approved, correct?
Approved with the following conditions as stated.
So
Typically wait for you to say that, but I got ahead of myself.
There's a lot.
Of course,
Oh, yeah.
You'll receive a letter. Yeah.
And I suggest you make copies and give it to all the employees so they're aware
Yes.
of it, and post it prominently. So-
I have one question to ask everyone in here. Why can't we park 2 cars of our employees on the street? I mean, they have legal plates. There's no the building to the left of us is gonna be torn down. There's a whole street. I just don't understand why we can't park our employees over there, so we can have those places for cars to work on there.
They-
Citizens of.
they just don't count as required parking spots.
I believe the
That's
ordinance
all.
requires the parking for employees to be on the property.
Yeah, that's just,
Just an expectation it's an expectation of running a business, so.
But I thank you. And we will do what we need to do to make sure the neighbors, we're more concerned about the neighbors.
We are too.
Good luck.
Okay, all right, item
Okay.
6 on the agenda is, are we moving along? Item 6 on the agenda is the confirmation of Planning Commission decision. Approved conditional use case number 2-17, an approved request by applicant Tamala Disney for a family care home for up to 8 persons to reside in the home at a time located at 4262 Dixie Highway. Do we have a motion to approve?
so moved.
Second.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
David McCauley Myers,
Yes?
Mike Friedman,
Yes.
Paul Nenny,
Yes,
John Langhorn,
Yes.
Gary Gross,
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Joanne Mejias.
I also wasn't here.
Motion carried to approve 2-17 conditional use for the family care home located at 4262 Dixie Highway.
Yeah, everybody says no, so yeah. Okay, item number 7, confirmation of planning commission decision tabled, youth adjustment case 3-17.
Do we even need to do that?
What are we looking for here?
That's the one that was
You did,
tabled
you
last
did
week.
make a motion to table it, so we just wanted to keep it on record.
Oh, okay,
You
so
did table it. I know it's
we
weird.
don't need to take any action, or do we?
I would just confirm, I would just vote to
confirming
confirm that you
it was
did table it
Do we have
last
a motion
month to be heard
confirm
this
the
month.
tabling of this?
Confirm that we tabled it at the last meeting, yes.
All, you can do the whole.
We have a second?
sure, second.
Roll call, please.
Joanne Mejias,
No. was not here.
Eric Rose,
Same.
John Langhorn,
I wasn't here either.
Paul Nenny,
Sure, yes.
Mike Friedman, David McCauley Meyer.
Yes.
Motion carried to table 3-17, use adjustment for 3120 Plymouth.
Okay, item 8, is there any old business or new business?
We don't have any.
Thank you.
Thank you for the large attendance. Appreciate it.
Item 9
Yes.
is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
That,
Second.
Motion is second, all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Meeting is adjourned
You're
at
outta here.
right on the dot of 8 p.m.
Actually, you want these big things back?
I can, I'd be happy to recycle.
That's good. My bin's full
I don't have any place in my office for them.